so much to do, but I know I'll find a way.
I got a question this morning from Willow Dobson, who was asking if I could make a video of actually making one of my masks, which I've actually been intending to do, but I've been kind of busy making masks. I'm not trying to diss anybody else's mask pattern with anything I'm doing here. The reason that I came up with this design is because I and my son, and I know many other people, especially folks on the spectrum, have issues with things being smashed too close to our face. Get claustrophobic, panic attacks, extra anxiety, and top of all the anxiety that's already going on. Plus, both my husband and I wear glasses, and we need to wear masks all day, especially if we're making masks for other people, and having our glasses fog up while we're trying to work is not really great. So this design it's twofold. One, that it is to keep the material, the fabric, away from the mouth and nose so you can talk, function normally. You're not having it smashed. You don't feel like you're being crushed. I know it doesn't make it look sexy and sleek and ninja-like because it's not super like that, super close to your face. But also having the breathe port means that when I exhale, my air is coming out of here. If you're wearing a fabric mask, any kind of fabric mask, you have to breathe through it. I mean, air is going to be going in and out. The important part is keeping the moisture on one side or the other. So the whole point of wearing the mask is to prevent you from giving your spit and snot and projecting it out onto things. I'm rambling right now. Anyway, so here's the tutorial, and I really hope it helps for people who are more visual and it, can watch somebody else doing it. And I guess that's it. So let's get rolling. When your kit first arrives, it'll be divided into 3 sections already for you. This is the breathe port version, which has the hole, but that's just what I'm going to be using because it's what I have cut right now. You'll notice on the breathe port version, and this is very important, the hole should be on opposite sides for the casing and the lining. If the hole is on the same side, when you sew it together, you'll end up with your hole on the wrong side on the inside. So just keep that in mind for this particular version. But if these were all flat, it wouldn't really matter. So the first thing you're going to do, I'm going to put these aside, is to stitch along this bottom line. Now I do mine 1/4 of an inch from the edge. You can do it 3/8 or even 1/2 inch if you want to. It's going to change the height overall of your mask. Let's see if I have one sitting here. I do. The distance that you sew is going to change how tall this seam is. It's not going to change it by a lot, obviously. But the important part is no matter what size you pick, just make sure it's consistent for all 3 layers. Otherwise, it won't lay nicely together. So let's do our first stitch. Everything's already lined up along that edge. Bring my machine over here. I'm going to lay this in here. And fire it up, hopefully. Make sure your pieces stay lined up. They might scooch. Go all the way past the edge. And you're going to repeat that for all 3 layers. So now I've done the same stitch on all 3 layers, my pocket, my lining, and my casing, and now I'm going to press to get my seams to go nice and flat. Now you don't have to press your pieces. I prefer to do it because, especially when I'm working with something that's going to sandwich like this, the more that your seams are poking up and out of the way like that, if I'm going to be stacking all these on top of each other, it's going to get all bunchy, they're not going to lay nice, and it's going to be a big pain in the butt when I go to sew them together later. So let's just go ahead and press them real quick. Now you may notice that there are these little scorch marks on here. That's actually from the laser. Whenever it hits the honeycomb tray underneath the laser, it bounces back and makes this little scorch, but they wash right out on the first washing. It smells kind of smoky at first too. All right, so I'm going to press my pieces, and I'm going to press them with the seam toward piece A, which is the big piece. And to do that, I'm making sure that the fold goes towards that way, not towards this way. Smash it down. There's that
nice and flat. Like I said before, you don't have to press them. I just find that it makes things easier for me if I have nice flat pieces to work with. You don't have to fight against it as much. Okay, so now that I'm done ironing, it's time to mark my pockets, cut and stitch lines. Now, this is something important to keep in mind. The pocket, which is this piece, that's the lining. The pocket and the lining go wrong side to right side, not right to right, or the opposite would be wrong to wrong, which would be that. So when you are doing something with the pocket and you have a breathe port, you have to make sure that you're going to mark your cut for the side the pocket's on. I've screwed this up so many times I can't even count anymore. So start with this. I've got my marking guides. These are from the last page of the pattern. I provided a page, basically you can just cut out the pieces so you have them, and I'm going to use my pocket markers and find my pen somewhere. All right, so I know that this is the side I'm going to cut. So this is the side I'm going to mark. So you want to take this edge, lines up with the sides of your fabric, and I'm going to do it over here. And this is to mark both of my stitch lines. So I'm going to mark one over here. And I'm going to mark one over here on this end. Can you guys see that? I don't know why I flipped over the rectangle. It's the same width, obviously. Okay, so that's my stitch lines, and then here is my cut line. And I've made sure that I've got my faces facing the right way. Again, line it up with the edge and make a little line. All right, now I'm going to put my lining piece aside so I can cut my pocket piece. These stitch lines, the stitch line on this end is to stitch the pocket to the lining. The stitch line on this end is just for the actual end of the pocket. So that's what we're going to do right now. So I've made my cut line and my stitch line. I'm going to cut at my cut line. And then I'm going to flip this over. And see, when I fold it over, I can see my stitch line. Can you see that? And I'm going to tuck it underneath and then tuck it so the stitch line is about in the middle. And iron it down so it doesn't try to run away from me while I'm sewing. You don't have to iron it, but it helps if you've got an iron. If you've got an iron, use your iron. Okay, and now I'm going to take this straight to the sewing machine so I can sew that edge down. Okay, this is my piece. See, it's folded under there. Bring it over here. This down. Oh, where'd my foot go? Get back here. Fuck, he's running away. I'm going to go all the way down past that edge, and I'm actually going to come up one more time. This part doesn't get a lot of stress on it because it's just what holds the pocket in place, but just because it will be something that's going to be repeatedly moved out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and reinforce it. Right on top of my previous stitch, hopefully. Yeah, a little bit to the side. Ah! See what I mean about squirreling? Yeah, over there. Yeah. Okay, snip and a snip. Okay, now that I have that part sewn down, I'm going to do my other mark. It's where I take my lining, remember, right face up. And I don't mean right and left, I mean right and wrong on fabric. And lay it on top. I have my stitch line there, and I'm going to sew the pocket to the lining. Okay. Sorry, I had to pause and start over in the middle of my thought because my chicken started going bananas outside and it kind of distracted me. Okay, so once you get this part sewn onto this part, now we're going to mark for the darts that make the nose and the chin, respectively, depending on which way you're pointing your face. So you have your pieces here, And we're going to fold them over in the middle. Hopefully you can actually see this. Wrong side's up. There you go. It's okay that the pocket and the lining don't line up perfectly here. This does not need to be absolutely perfect. It's just to give you a dart. So get that as close as we can. And then again, you're going to take your marking pieces, and this one is a medium, so I need my medium pieces. There is a piece A and piece B. So check which one you're doing. B, I need this one. A, I need the bottom is A. So for medium, I'm going to find any one of these edges as long as it looks like it's more or less centered and lined up. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. And I've lined it up with this edge, this blue part, because that's the lining. And I'm going to make a mark with my pen along this edge. I hope you can see that. You can of course do it on the other side if you want instead. You've only got to do it on one side because it's folded. So now that I've got my, oh, it didn't draw, look at that. Oh, pen! Pen, you disappoint me. There you go. Okay, let's try this again. All right, now we'll do it on this side because hey, we're already here. So put your line. There's my chicken flying up again in the background. Line, hopefully draw. Yes, thank you. Okay. And go ahead, do the same thing at the bottom. Get yourself lined up as best you can. Come in with your big old piece of paper. I'm only doing this on my sewing machine so you guys can see it. Please do it on a table or a flat surface so that you don't go insane. La la la. Line it up with the edge. Boop. Make another line. This one actually showed up. Okay. And once you do that, you are going to stitch along that line twice. It's important to do it twice because this is the nose or the chin. It's going to be taking a lot of stress, and so you want to make sure that your seam doesn't pop out. Again, it doesn't need to be perfect. Just try. Just try to line it up at least a little bit. I'm going to go once. Take off some of this excess because I do that. And then I'm going to go once. The other way. Ow, that was my finger. And I'm a little bit on, a little bit off. I'm trying to do this a little faster than I normally do, just so you guys aren't watching me sew at my normal snail's pace. Get out there. Okay, same thing on the bottom. And that sucker up. Smoosh. Get on there. Come on. And other end. I habitually cut this off because my old sewing machine would bind if there was any thread that was just even looking at it funny. So I'm always having to clean this up, even though this one probably can handle it. Right, ta-da. So we've got our pieces folded off. Now you can just press this to the side. It's, you know, if you want. I tend to do this because I don't like the extra bulk. Just don't cut it too close because then you've completely defeated the purpose of having a seam there. Cut off that excess. And you're going to do the exact same thing for your casing. Again, make sure that it's inside out. Draw your lines. If you've got a dark colored fabric like this and you wouldn't be able to see your pen so well, try using a piece of chalk, or you don't have chalk, I have a pastel here, white crayon. It doesn't really matter as long as you can see it. Okay, so now I've got my casing and my pocket / lining layers both sewn. If you were doing the not breathe port version of this, at this point, all you need to do is put these two together and sew them, and I'll show you what you're going to do if you're doing that. I will press these. I'm just showing you right now. But you're going to have this one right side out. It's going to go into this one wrong side out. And, hey, give me. this is all going to get sewed together. Now there's actually a little trick to this to make this work faster. Keep this one like this, right? And this one like this. Line them up on that edge right there. And then just peel this one back, keep your thumbs on the inside, and tuck it over, and it will line up perfectly for you. Then when you go to sew it, see your edges are pretty much already exactly where they need to be. Just make sure your middle seams are lined up, and you're just going to, let's see, I'll move this here. You're just going to sew along your same edge, your top, all the way to this side, all the way across. Same thing on the bottom. Line your edges up, sew all the way across to the other side. Once you get that done, your mask is mostly done. Pretty much all you need to do at that point is make your little tuck-ins and do your trim. But first, I'm going to pause for a second to show you the difference if you're doing the breathe port mask, because you can't just stitch all the way across or you won't be able to get to your circles. You need to be able to sew this to that being the casing to the lining, but not the pocket. So you don't want the pocket in the way. So instead, if your sewing machine is cooperative, if your fabric is cooperative, what you can do is just tuck the one into the other, pull the pocket back. Now this is, I'm putting a lot of ifs because I've had some bad sewing machines in my life. This one's pretty good so far, but you're going to line that up on the edges. Don't worry about as much about the hole when you line it up. First, you want to make sure that the edges are going to line up. And your hole pretty much should just line itself up. Then you're going to put this in your machine or do this by hand, whichever, and you're going to stitch around this hole 3 times. If you're super good with turning, then you can make circles. I'm not super good with turning, so I make a bunch of little hexagons that just overlap, and that's up to you. Or you can hand stitch it if both of those things are too frustrating. So I'm going to make my little hexagons because this is being nice and cooperative right now, and that's nice because it must just know I'm videotaping and it can't be giving me any lip right now. Put that under here and make sure that your pocket is back, tucked back. You'll be able to tell because you have a bunch of extra layers over here. And bring it down. Do some hexagon action here. And get to that point, put my needle down, pick up my foot, and turn. Stitch for a little bit, make sure my needle's down, pick up my foot, and turn. Keep those 2 pieces lined up as best you can. It's okay if it's not perfectly lined up because the hole will be stretched and moved around by putting the port in. The port is actually slightly bigger than the hole, and the edges will begin to fray, but because you're stitching around them several times like this, it's not going to fray past this point. At least we hope. So we'll fast forward to when I'm done with this because this is just going to be a bunch of me turning and picking it up and turning and picking it up. Rinse, repeat. Okay, so you can now see I've stitched my hole to my hole. And now it's just like as if it weren't a breathe port version. You can just line these pieces up and stitch all the way across. I'm going to press mine first though because that's how I am. I'm going to press it by keeping it the way it is and just putting the tip of the iron on the inside to smash this flat and to smash that flat against it. Okay, so I pressed it and I've lined them up, and here we're going to go. I'm going to do mine from the inside. Come on, thread, don't jump out. Oh, you're about to. I see it. I see you doing it. Pull this over a bit. And again, I'm about 1/4 of an inch from the edge. You can go closer or further, especially at this point. It's not going to matter that much because you've already got your pieces together. So whatever you feel comfortable with. This very light lining is jumping around a lot. My cockatiel has taken this opportunity to serenade us with this impression of a car alarm. Okay, there's one side. And I'm going to do the other one the other way because I don't want to have to fight against the flow of that pocket. Snip that off. It should be sitting pretty nicely by this point just because you got this down. All right, sit that down. All right, so now your mask is basically assembled. Now we just need to figure out which side is going to be the nose, put on the nose wire, the trim, and close the ends. I'm going to make this the nose because I found that for most adults, this ends up fitting better in the nose and this fits better as the undertuck under the chin. So I'm going to put my nose wire here. I am not going to use my machine to put my nose wire on, and I will show you a pointed example, no pun intended. Why? Will that focus? Yeah, I have a tendency to hit wires with my sewing machine needles and bend them, so I'm going to just hand stitch this part. Okay, so I've got my needle and thread, and I have my pre-bent wire. Now, this is a paper clip. This is a no-slip paper clip, so it's got the little grooves on it, which is really great for doing this actually because it prevents it from slipping around too much. I've seen a lot of places saying that you need to use a coated paper clip, and I'm gonna let you guys in a little secret here. They're saying you need to use a coated paper clip because they're thinking, well, you're gonna wash this and therefore you don't want your paper clips to start rusting in here. This plastic coating on here is not to prevent paper clips from rusting. It's to sell paper clips because it makes them look pretty. That's really why it's here. You're going to wash this and that's not going to prevent water from getting in there. And I know because I've got plenty of paper clips, coated paper clips like this, that have rusted out within a year because they were in a moist condition, and some of these are 30 years old with no rust. Yeah, so you don't have to use a coated paper clip. Also, coated paper clips are a little bit thinner, which means the wire is a little thinner. So if you're looking for a thinner wire because you are putting it on a child or somebody you don't want it to have as much finger strength to be able to smoosh this to their nose, then go ahead and use the coated ones, but you don't have to use them as like a rust preventative. It's really not going to make any difference. Okay, so I want to find the middle of my paper clip, and I'm going to mark it just for my own sanity. Looks like it's about there. And I'm going to sew the middle of my paper clip to the middle part right on the seam that I've already made. And I keep that mark there because you'll find a lot of times while you're sewing this, it'll start to slide one way or another. And you want to keep it centered because otherwise you end up with it, you know, over there or something goofy like that. So having a line there ahead of time really helps prevent some headaches. I'm just going to go ahead and sew that directly on. Make a couple loops. Again, this does not need to be perfect. This is going to be covered up by the trim, so it's okay if your stitches are not pretty and uniform and straight. It's just to hold the paper clip on. Make sure not to put it too close to the edge. Like, don't put it up here. I'm putting it on the seam because you want to have a little bit of padding. Otherwise, this will be attached to this and eventually it'll start to fray and come off. So, especially because you're going to be moving the wire so much to adjust it to your face. All right, centered, more or less. Now I'm going to go ahead and make 2 more marks on where my little end pieces are. You don't have to do this. I just do it again because I don't want it getting all crooked. So I'm going to make my chalk mark. Oh, cockatiels. And another chalk mark. And then I am going to just go stitchy, 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 stitchy all the way across, and I'll show you when I'm done. Okay, so we've gone all the way from one end to the other, going around the little loops at the end a couple of times to secure it, to make sure it doesn't slide back and forth. And my thread's starting to get pretty darn short here, so I think it's time to knot it off. Go up and down one more time. See, I just got this messy stitch line across the back, but it's okay. All right. Snip. Tie that. And now that you got your nose wire in, your next step is to put on your trim. Now, soft trim is what I use with this design, and the reason for that is using something like bias tape or ribbon or something that's doesn't have any give to it or stretch to it is not going to provide that seal along the nose quite as well. Having the softer material, and we're going to be using fleece today, having the softer material on there conforms to the shape of your face a little better. Plus it makes the nose wire not so painful on your nose because there's some padding. And because it is a dense material, it's still going to be blocking the moisture from going in and out. And that's what we're going to put on our edge. I'm trying to make it look like, ooh, but I'm going to show you how to do that in just a second here once I clean up. So we're going to put on our trim. I've got a piece that's about 1.5 inches wide here. You want to have a minimum of 1 inch. You can go wider or narrower, however tight you want your edge to be. I found that 1.5 inches actually gives me a little bit better coverage on the wire and allows to wrap around a bit more smoothly. So see how it looks like that. So you're going to start with more or less half of it on this side above and then half of it below. You can scooch up or down however you feel. This is what I'm doing this time. And line it up with the edge of your fabric. It doesn't have to be perfectly like razor sharp lined up. You're actually going to end up with excess coming off your other end, but this gives you a good good yardstick to start with. So let's do that. And now because this is thicker, you've got multiple layers that are going to be on top of each other. Some machines are going to be grouchy about that. Just go slow. If you need to move your needle forward manually, then do that. And I'm just going to be top stitching this and keeping that much off the side. I'm pretty much on top of my seam line again, but when you get to the wire, you need to slow down and be careful here, or you're going to end up bending your needles just like I do. So I'm going to go right to the side of my wire. Yeah, I see you. Yeah, you try breaking my needles, you bum. And right on the edge, that is okay because this is only the first part of this. As you see, I come a little bit, 3/4 of an inch hanging off the end. Right. Now, you're going to wrap that over and make a little sandwich. Like so. Sandwich. Fleece sandwich. Mouthful of fuzz. And now I'm going to stitch it down pretty close to its edge. I'd say somewhere between 1/4 and 1/8. But I'm going out far enough to make sure I don't hit that wire where it curls. And keep your layers pulled like this so you don't bunch it up and then sew it, because then you'll end up with weird bulgy parts. I'm not going to make a joke about weird bulgy parts, even though I really, really want to. Okay, getting across. Huzzah, huzzah. Okay, oh, come on. All right. And so you see we have our trim piece on there now. Cut that little bit off the end there. And you're going to do the exact same thing on the bottom with your other trim piece. Bing! Ta-da! Oh, look, it's magically sewed. Oh, okay. All right. So everything's sewed. It's really flat here because there's a wire, but you know, obviously you can bend it and it'll be mask shaped. Who knew? All right, so last thing you have to do is the channels for your elastic. And yes, I just left that raw because it's tucked under anyways. If you want to be super professional about it, you can finish this seam, you can serge it, you can do whatever you want to do. I'm not worrying about it right now. So you're going to tuck this under. Now with your pocket, you want to make sure you're not doing this. Okay, don't close your pocket closed or you won't be able to get to it. So I'm tucking it in just about to the pocket. I'd say it's somewhere between 3/4 of an inch and an inch. I've been going a little bit further. I know in the instructions I say more like this, but that's really going to just depend on how wide your face is basically. But for most people that I've been making these for, it seems like this is about right for average face width, whatever that means. So I've got my little tuck, my little fold over. It's very thick because you've got lots of layers here. Again, some sewing machines are going to get angry at you. But what you need to do is stitch about 3/8 of an inch to 1/2 an inch from your edge there. And so that's what I'm going to do. Wish me luck. Good luck, Katie. Why, thank you. That's very kind of you. Push it on there. Smush. Stabby, stabby. And go. Come on. Yay! I love the sewing machine. Why don't you marry it? Oh my gosh, really? Okay. And once that way, and then I'll do it in this direction. No, I'll have top stitching. I'll do this direction. And then once the other way. Hiya! Oh, I didn't do the footy foot thing. Come on. Needle up. Footy foot. It's got this little springy thing that if you pull the thing up, it'll keep the foot in place, which is really handy for heavyweight fabric like this. Normally, I'd have to have my husband hold it. Okay, ta-da! So I've got a channel now. This is where my elastic's gonna go, and I'll show you that part later, but let's sew the other side again. Hurrah! Snap! Okay, so my mask is sewn. This is a done, finished mask. It just needs elastic added into it, or ribbon, or whichever you'd like to use as a fastener. I'm using elastic. I'm using 3/8 inch because I've found that this is the most comfortable and has a good stretch ratio and durability compared to 1/4 inch. If 1/4 inch is all you can get, you can still use it. You're just not going to need as much as it. So I'm just using a punch stick because that's what I happen to have here. Give myself some space. And I have a big old plastic yarn needle. A latch hook tool also works great for this if you've got one. I actually put some up on my website. I had a couple of extras left over that I never used for anything, so they've just been sitting around, I guess, for this. And you're going to pull it through your channel. Now, depending on how you want to do this, there's a couple variations. Most importantly, one side needs to have a loop. So in this case, I'm probably going to make the loop on the top. This is the part that goes behind the head. This is the part that goes behind the neck because this is where my nose is. And then this can either tie, or if you have the person that's going to be wearing this mask handy, you can actually put that on them, figure out where it goes behind their neck and mark it and sew it together. Another option is that you can sew ribbon onto the two ends so that you can use a combination of ribbon to tie it and the elastic for the fit. Or in my son's case, I actually put Velcro and a little bit of fleece on each end, so he has 2 connector tabs that he can do because he's not very good at tying bows. So that helped him out. But basically, you've got a done mask. I'll show you real quick about the breathe port. If this was just a standard mask, this would not be a hole. Obviously, you can see that that's accessible to the pocket. Your pocket inserts will go in here. This is where you would put a filter inside. But I'll just show you the breathe port real quick, and then I think we're done. Okay, so when you go to put in your breathe port, let's take this out of the way for a second, because I'm not cutting that right now. Take out your centerpiece, and you're going to make sure you get your threaded end is going to come out the front. So you're going to tuck it into your pocket. I know it doesn't look like there's room, but there totally is. And get it to your circle, and you're going to turn it like you're putting it into something you're turning it with, which I was turning the wrong way at first. There we go. Okay, slide your capsule back in, Put your top back on. You grab it from the inside. And then you've got a good seal. It's actually being stretched. That's why your hole has to be a little bit smaller. You've got your 2 layers between, little sandwich, and your interior. So you can see that in there. So if you already have 2 filtrations, but if you put a filter in the filter pocket as well, then you have 3 layers. And because we used a heavyweight material, then you're not going to be breathing through this as much as you're going to be breathing through this. And that's a much smaller potential surface area for moisture. And when it's really almost impossible for any moisture to get out of this unless you're pouring water through it. But so that's how you put it in. And when you go to wash it, again, you're just going to reach in, take the lid off, take the center out, go the other way in the threading. Righty, tighty, lefty, loosey. Katie, come on. And pull it back out. And then you can just put it in the wash. You can leave the elastic in when you put it in the wash if you have something like a swish bag or a lingerie bag. If you leave the elastic in without that, there's a chance it might get wrapped around the agitator in your washing machine and get all stretched out. So take it out if you don't have a swish bag. If you do have a swish bag or lingerie bag, one you use for bras and things that have straps, then just put it in there. You don't need to worry about the elastic. But that's basically it. Let me know if you guys have any questions. I hope this helps.